Boeing, the world's largest aerospace company, wants to start production at a new $2 billion manufacturing plant in South Carolina this July. That plant would create more than 1,000 jobs, but the government's National Labor Relations Board is trying to stop Boeing because this new plant would be in South Carolina, a right-to-work state, instead of in Washington state, where labor rights are the law of the land. So here's a company who's trying to create jobs, but is getting a roadblock from the White House. Let's bring in my good friend Verge Bonero, the mayor of Lansing, Michigan. Verge, do you support the NLRB's decision?
Well, I support the law, and I support people having an opportunity. You know, I was brought up to believe that you reap what you sow, and what Boeing has sown is seeds of discontent. I mean, let's tell the rest of the story here, Eric. Let's be honest. This is a company that gets just got a $30 billion contract from the federal government, gets a lot of its proceeds and profits from the federal government. This is a company that made over $500 million just in the first quarter of this year, and yet pays its workers $11 an hour. Starting pay is $11 an hour. That's a little more than $20,000 a year. But the CEO of the company made $20 million, 1,000 times,
you know
1,000 times the average worker.
It's a free market. It's a private business. They can pay their CEO whatever the heck they want. You or I should have no problem with it. The only one who should are shareholders. Let's get back to the issue, the labor issue. What in the world? Why does the NLRB have an opinion about Boeing opening a new plant in South Carolina?
The NLRB has an opinion.
They already have a plant in Washington state.
The NLRB has an opinion and a role in how workers are treated. And I want to live in a country where workers have rights and can choose to form a union if they wish. You know, I don't wake up in the morning and say, WWPD, what would Putin do? I want to live in a country where people have rights and people have freedom of association.
Does the NLRB have a right to tell Boeing how much profit it can make?
Well, of course not.
Well, that's what they're doing. They're saying you can't hire workers at a lower wage in South Carolina. You need to hire them in Washington state, or we can get our grimy little goonian hands on you and raise your wage.
I don't think that's what they're saying. I think what they're saying is that workers have rights, and I think they've made a legal finding of fact that workers are being punished for their union activities. And I want to live in a country where people have the right to belong to a union without fear of reprisal. Now, maybe that's not the America you envision, but that's the America I want to live in.
No, the America I envisioned is a free market America, like South Carolina says, right to work, pay them what you want, do what you have to do.
Well,
build a plant here, hire 1,000 people, spend $2 billion in our state.
Wonderful.
That is the market. That's what's going to bring the economy back. Not pretending to have a false wage level like Washington State or Michigan.
Boeing was warned well in advance that there was going to be problems, that they should not proceed because they had an unresolved labor issue in Washington State. They chose to go ahead. Their investors, they made that decision. Now, that's their decision. They'll live with it. They've made their bed. But I say let's look at the rest of the story. These workers, while Boeing's profits were soaring, the workers went without a pay raise for 6 years. Now, I'd like to know how that would work with you, Eric. If you went without, let me finish. If you went without a pay raise for 6 years, you'd probably switch over to MSNBC.
You know what else comes with profits? Taxes. And that's exactly what you need. The taxes are what's paying all those federal salaries, all those federal unionized workers. Listen to this. If you're in a union, all wages considered, $917 per week unionized, $717 non-union, same workers, 28% higher. Is that fair?
I'm not sure what you're talking about because I'm not looking at a graph.
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, if you're in a union,
are you saying
you're paid 28% more than if you're non-union.
Well, you're saying that union workers pay more taxes?
No, I'm sorry. My point was about Boeing paying more taxes with profit. I'm saying the union model raises wages artificially.
I disagree. Unions have raised everybody's wage. They didn't just raise the union wage. They raised the non-union wage. That's how we got a middle class in this country. And now, interestingly, when the unions are down to about 7% of the population, interestingly, the middle class is under attack, being eroded.
Why is that?
Why is it? Because you're allergic to the term share the wealth. You think it's socialism.
I'm allergic to that term.
Yeah, I don't know where you come from, because the fact is that's what created the middle class in this country.
No, that's what created Marxism, not capitalism.
Let me I don't want to confuse you with the facts, but let me give you one. The average CEO used to make 30 times what the average worker made. Now it's 300 times.
And what's happening is the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and the middle class is being eliminated. And who should tell us what that ratio should be? You, Verge? You, Mayor of Lansing, Michigan? By the way, how's it working for Lansing, sir?
What I believe in is a country where people can choose to form a union if they so choose, and they don't have to worry about being punished for it. Now, I know you prefer emerging markets like China and Russia, where they have authoritarian governments.
let's stay in
where they have
Lansing, Michigan,
authoritarian
Verge.
governments that keep people down so they can pay their people dirt and pollute their environment and get away with it.
Do you or do you not have a budget gap this year?
Of course I do.
And what are you going to do about it?
What
are you going to do about it, Verge?
Well, for 5 years I've been cutting, and I'm going to have to go right on cutting and trying to do what's right, trying to provide the best services I can. I've cut my pay, and I've cut the pay of all my top people, and I'm negotiating with unions. I'm negotiating with the unions.
Go ahead.
And reopening their contracts so workers to get concessions.
To lower the wages, right?
I'll have no choice.
See, well, you're contradicting yourself, Verge. On one hand, you're telling me raise the wages, send the people to Washington State, don't go to South Carolina, but you're saying I have to cut wages.
Here's a little difference for you, Eric. Now, see if you can follow the money. Boeing is making record profits. I just got through telling you Boeing made $500 million in the first quarter, and they made continuing profits. And while their profits were soaring, they refused to share the wealth with their workers.
Are you going to raise taxes?
I put that up to the voters. The voters said no, so the answer is no.
Fantastic. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you, Verge Bonero.
Good to see you.
While Osama bin Laden is no longer a threat to the U.S., his death is opening up a whole new set of terror concerns. Should we bring back the water bucket? And is Pakistan really a friend or an enemy in our war on terror? We're going to debate all that after this. For more than 5 years, Osama bin Laden was living under the nose of the Pakistani government, the same government that we've given nearly $20 billion in aid to over the last 10 years. Meanwhile, we got this warning from Pakistan's Prime Minister Yusuf Gilani yesterday.
Let no one draw any wrong conclusions. Any attack against Pakistan's strategic assets, whether overt or covert, will find a matching response.
Gilani then tried to save face for his country by saying we shouldn't draw any, quote, wrong conclusions. Joining me now on how the U.S. should deal with Pakistan is Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and Ahmed Rehab, executive director of the Chicago Office of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. Dr. Jasser, please tell us about that. That sounded fairly, I don't know, angry, insightful when the Pakistani foreign minister said, hey, if you come into our airspace, you may meet our helicopters.
Well, this is all, Eric, it's all posturing. They got their hand caught and slapped. They had, within their confines, either they were complicit or they have absolutely no control over what's going on in their own borders, and now they're trying to make up for it by posturing. And I think we need to reassess exactly the formula we've been using, which is you're either our friend or our foe, and it's just a binary equation, and we realize that it's much more complicated. We may have common enemies with countries like Pakistan that we may work with in the short term, but in the long term, they're harboring ideologies of political Islam and ideologies that are actually threatening our society and our anti-Western, anti-liberal democracy, and will never be our allies. So we have to work to separate countries like Saudi Arabia that foster Wahhabism, but yet we may want to work with petroleum, etc. So we have to be careful to change the paradigm from friend and foe to a continuum of those ideologies that threaten us and those that may work with us with a common enemy.
Mr. Rehab, we're scheduled to give $3 billion in aid to Pakistan this coming year. What do you think? What does CARE think we should do about that?
Well, I speak for myself. I'm not a fan of giving aid in the billions to any foreign nation, whether it's Pakistan or Egypt or Israel, who receives the largest amount of aid from the United States. I believe that we can have diplomatic relations based on mutual interests, and I believe that there is no country in the world that we need more than they need us. And so at the end of the day, I would have to say that Pakistan is neither a foe nor a friend in this war on terror. I think it's been helpful in some ways. There's stuff lacking, stuff to be desired still to happen in terms of the relationship, in terms of going after the terrorists.
Dr.
And that's what we need
Jasser,
to put pressure on.
I'm sorry, Dr. Jasser, what should our response be to the Pakistan government, knowing that Mr. bin Laden had been sitting under their nose for 5 years, directly next to one of their military academies? What should we be saying to them?
Well, I think we need to reassess the relationship and say, you know, we're done throwing cash at you, but we're going to have deliverables. We're going to be involved in partnerships. If you look, the Bush administration developed millennium accounts for countries in Africa where we had pay-as-you-go criteria, where we said, you know what, there's going to be deliverables. I think it would be wrong to turn isolationist because those countries are already headed in the wrong direction towards Islamism, towards theocracy, which will create ideas that are against the West and continue to propagate conspiracy theories and a population that doesn't believe in working with us. So if we're going to work with them, we need to help them build institutions, work hand in hand through partnerships that are measurable.
Go ahead, sir.
As I listen to Zuhdi Jasser speak here, he's one of those far-right individuals who's trying to make this war against Al-Qaeda into a larger
How about you stick to the subject, Ahmed, and talk to substance?
That is the subject, Zuhdi, because that's exactly what you're trying to do here, and I have to call you out on it. And the fact is, you've been a sock puppet for the axis of Islamophobia in this country.
more
nobody
personal attacks instead of substance.
Everybody who supports you hates Islam for a reason. Look,
oh my gosh, this is wonderful.
Ahmed, you think this is about pro-Islam? We're not out to take people out of our lives. We're out to fight Al-Qaeda and to apprehend terrorists.
Guys, fellas,
Mr. Rehab, hold on for a second. Go ahead, Zuhdi, respond, please.
There is nothing more pro-Islamic or pro-Muslim, Ahmed, than those that want to defeat theocracy. However, you and your associates that believe in theocracy want to push theocracy down the throat of Muslims all over the world through the Brotherhood movement and other aspects of political Islam. And you want to say that you represent...
Guys, we have to leave it here. Fellas, we have to leave it here. We're running out of time. We'll bring you back for another segment. Hang in there. Are we sending a mixed message? Spirited discussion here about our relationship with Pakistan. I'm back with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and Ahmed Rehab, executive director of the Chicago office of CARE. Guys, let's turn our talk about the enhanced interrogation techniques that were used on Khalid Sheikh Mohammed that ultimately led to the capture and kill of Osama bin Laden. Dr. Jasser, why not use all forms of interrogation if it leads to the capture of some of the most dangerous people in the world?
Well, I think that's a great question. In this democracy and transparency, we talk about these things, and I think we need to look at what we got as a result of waterboarding and the fact that we can't be sanctimonious and say that we will not use any forms of coercion. I mean, what are we going to use? Harsh language? At the end of the day, we have to be transparent. It doesn't mean we can use all forms. It doesn't mean we turn into thuggish societies like Syria that is now using torture to get Facebook passwords. We're getting data that was used to capture the most wanted criminal in society. And I think ultimately we need to reassess that sanctimonious blanket, we won't use torture, and realize that, you know, war is messy, and there may be times in which we have to use things that transparently we say are part of the coercion we need to do.
Now, Mr. Rehab, Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday had a great question. He asked Mr. Donnellan, you know, if it's okay to shoot someone in the eye and kill him, an unarmed man, why is it not okay to waterboard him? Where is CARE on waterboarding and the capture and kill of Osama bin Laden? Can you square those two?
Look, the difference between us and those whom we fight in the form of Al-Qaeda and other militant radical groups is that we are a nation of values. We're a nation of laws. And in the fight to maintain the upper hand, we can't lose our souls. We can't lose our principles and our values that make us worth fighting for. At the end of the day, torture is torture. By any other name, it's still torture. And the problem with that is it's been proven time and again that it does not provide accurate information. It has led us into a war in Iraq that was completely misguided, that wasted a lot of money and spent a lot of lives.
Hang on, sir. I
based
apologize.
on false information obtained through torture.
Before I lose a segment here, Dr. Jasser, the head of the CIA, Leon Panetta, point blank said waterboarding was one of the techniques used, and it aided in the capture of bin Laden. Any questions?
No, I mean, I think ultimately we have to realize that the Judeo-Christian and in Islam, we believe that there's just war. And if you're unless you're a pacifist, you have to believe that ultimately targeting individuals, morality is going to win over evil by the use of some force and coercion as transparently necessary. We're transparent with it, and I think it was moral. We got bin Laden with it, and ultimately we just have to be transparent and clear about it. But to say that we're not going to use it at all is naive, as the...
but as
very quickly, sir, very quickly.
As Jews, Christians, and Muslims, we also believe in the honorable fight. We also believe in fighting in a way that does not
we have to leave it there, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser and Mr. Ahmed Rehab from CARE. Thank you, guys. We'll be right back. Tomorrow, the President and the First Lady will host Poetry Night at the White House. Lots of you weighing in on my Facebook page. Keep the comments coming. Thanks for spending the hour with me. You'll see Glenn back here tomorrow night. Good night, everybody.